Welcome to the Sip and Say It podcast with your host, Carlos, a.k.a. Los, a podcast that promises to deliver a raw and unfiltered experience as we dive into the one-on-one conversations about a wide array of topics. We're inviting listeners to engage in candid discussions, personal stories, and diverse perspectives. Say what's on your minds. Let's create an open space for honest dialogue. As a village, let's immerse ourselves on trending issues, personal anecdotes, thought-provoking themes. Nothing is off limits. Tune in and become part of the conversations. Let's sip and say it together.
Whoa, let's go, people. Let's go. Let's go. Welcome to Sip and Say It. It's your host, Los, and my boy. I'll let him introduce himself.
It's Kev.
What's up, people? So yeah, it's been a little bit, and we actually been in conversations of what to be able to bring on this next episode, and I shot it out there. And our topic today is about balancing love and ambition. What do you think, Kev?
I think this is a great topic to talk about. Uh, it's one of the common things I've heard about from other people saying, my wife or my husband's complaining I'm working too much.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we got peppered with a lot of emails, which is actually surprising. You don't realize when you put things out into the universe how the people will respond, right? So we have a nice load of all kind of emails that came in, and we just kind of incorporated it in our on our script today, just kind of to let you, the listener, hear some of the stuff that's out there, right? So we're just looking to explore and to see how delicate the dance between relationships and career aspirations, right? Again, I'm your Los, along with Kev, and today we're looking to dive into that topic that resonates with kind of many of us, which is the struggle of maintaining the relationship while pursuing that demanding career. Now that's a lot, man. That's a that's a big topic, completely big topic. So, you know, that's a situation whether you're climbing the corporate ladder, launching a startup, juggling multiple projects. It's just easy to let your personal life take a back seat, right? And that's probably the one of the more dangerous things when you're diving into a career, trying to really get your feet into something, to make something of yourself, to provide for your family, and or start just setting the ball in motion for the future, right? Those are things that we're going to try to dive into and uncover the ways to find balance and keep the spark alive, right? Because that's part of the deal. You got to spark that life that you have with that significant other. And, a lot of us end up falling short as we, dive into our busiest times of building our career and at the same time trying to juggle the home. So I'm going to kick it off and push it to Kev because Kev, he scoured a little bit of these emails and he threw a couple different ones and we'll both chime into it. So Kev is yours, man. Kick it off.
All right. So I was going through some emails, like Lo said, and one of the emails I came across talked about when I first started my career, I was working a 60-hour week or 60-hour weeks. And my partner felt neglected And we argued a lot. And honestly, I didn't realize how much I was missing out on until we finally hit a breaking point in our relationship.
Oof. That's a common one too, man. Many people they just kind of become absorbed in that work. Um and they forget the importance of nurturing that relationship. What you think, bro?
Yeah, I agree. It's hard to know when you're failing one way or the other because it's funny. Like we are in a situation where we're working and we're hyper focused on one thing, and we're kind of blind to everything that's going around us because we're so focused on a project or a task that we're given. Um, from a man perspective, it's kind of we're told that we need to be the provider, we need to work hard, do everything we can for the family, but we've never really been given or let know that taking care of the family and being the provider also means you need to be an emotional provider. You need to take care of the family from the perspective of I need to be there to see every little league game of my sons.
Mm.
I need to be there so that my significant other can take a break and do something with her friends.
So check it. Now that you brought that part, because you spoke on the male side of the house, but how much more difficult is it for the female, right? The female not only for her to establish herself, but also then coming home and trying to take care of the kids, clean the house, um, and at the same time just trying to work on your relationship, right? Like, man, that's just got to be a very very stressful situation in there, and that's why we're having this conversation today. Realistically, is you know talk about these things and bring some points. And I hope, but before we close today, and we're going to go through a couple more examples, but before we close today, there's a person that Kev introduced me to, obviously, in doing some reading, and she is a very interesting person. If you guys get the chance to kind of dive into and read some of her books, and we'll elaborate a little bit more as we keep going. But Kev, hit us with the another email.
Okay, another email we had is we had to set boundaries. I started scheduling date nights just like I would a meeting. It sounds silly, but it really helped us connect. It helped me to focus and treat my relationship as I would treat a project at work. It reminded me that I needed to put work into my relationship, that I shouldn't take it for granted.
Mm.
Jeez.
Okay. All right. So give me a little bit more of that. How do you feel about that?
Well, I feel like, yeah, it's true because a lot of times we do take things for granted. Uh, we go out to work, and again, I'm going to say this from a traditional standpoint. So I'm not saying this from one way or the other, and I'm not saying one thing is right and the other versus the other. Traditionally, traditionally, the man or the head of the household goes out to work. That's our task. And then our expectations are I'm performing my task, so my partner is going to perform their task. But we don't realize that the joint task is to maintain constant communication with each other, to be loving with each other, and not to take each other for granted. You want to know that if I trip and am about to stumble, the other person is going to be there to catch me. But if I take that person for granted and I never give them the time, the attention that a relationship requires, then if I trip and stumble, I shouldn't be surprised when there's no one there to catch me. So from that perspective, we need to treat our relationship just like we would treat everything else.
Mm.
If you have a car, you need to change the oil, rotate your tires, do all that stuff to do maintenance so the car continues to work for you. If you go to work and you have a couple of projects, then you know what step one, two, three, and four are. So you can, you can complete the project and you get kudos for doing a good job. But we don't apply those same concepts to a relationship. We just sometimes take things for granted, and then all of a sudden we're surprised or even angered when the other person brings up to us and puts us on notice, like you haven't been doing what you need to do.
That's facts. I mean, you know what it is? I think it may sound kind of trivial to a lot of people, and when you say, or that person was saying, kind of scheduling time, right? But obviously, it's a crucial step into showing that you value relationship just as much as your career.
Exactly. Yes. Speak the truth, brother. Yes.
Yeah. And it. Listen, again, this is just things that people are throwing at us, but how important is that, right? That you're not only grinding, um, but when you clearly identify that your significant other needs that time. And sometimes we're blind to it, man. And I always kind of compare it. We get to a point where you take a bottle of soda, shake it up, and you know we're realizing that there's some issues, but we keep ignoring it until that pressure releases, right? And that's the part that we don't ever want to get to. Want to be able to get to a point where you can communicate with each other and you know again in so many different facets. Schedule just like work. Those opportunities to go out, go hang out, you know, go have dinner somewhere, go take a trip. Um, Man, sometimes it could be as easy of closing everything around you and staying home for the weekend and really enjoying, some time together, relaxing, either in your bedroom watching TV, downstairs in the den, just having a good time. Just, you know, a hug goes a very long way. And that is so reassuring. And sometimes us men and us women completely forget about that. We forget about how important love of a hug. What does that mean? That's human contact. That is, I
Hmm.
miss you, I love you, I need you, or I'm just here. What do you think?
Yeah. I agree to that. A hug can take care of a lot of issues.
Mm,
Just feeling the warmth of the other person, having that human contact, that touch,
hmm
it's amazing. And going back to the topic of scheduling, in hindsight, I feel bad about something. Years ago, I knew a couple, and at the time, I thought it was kind of funny because they would sit down and they would compare their calendars. And I would be like, "You guys are a married couple. Why are you checking your calendars?"
mm,
Right? It didn't hit me till maybe a year or two later when I'm like, "Oh, they were actually trying to find time in their schedule, or they were intentionally scheduling time with each other. They were letting each other know you're important, and I need to fit you into my schedule." Because I would, I'd watch them. "Oh, what are you doing this day?" I'm doing this." "Oh, you know what? I can move my meeting around. I can change this." And they would actually find the times to have dates and be with each other. And I, I guess at that time I was immature enough, and I thought it was kind of silly. Like, you're a married couple. I don't understand what you're doing. But as you get more grays in your hair,
hmm
uh, you gain some wisdom, and then you realize, oh, I learned a lesson from those two, which at the time I didn't realize I was learning. But a couple years later, I realized what they were doing, and I definitely learned a lesson from that.
I think you said one word that resonates with me is intentional.
Hmm.
They intentionally understood where they were at in life. They understood how, if they let themselves get influenced by their careers and how busy their schedule was, that they wouldn't be able to stay connected. So an intentional move of scheduling it and putting it together, you rejuvenate yourself.
Yeah.
And they clearly were rejuvenating themselves, intentionally putting time for each other. That's wow. You know, I sit back and I think I couldn't do that right now. That's key. These are lessons that from listening to some of these people that or being observant to these people that do these things, how much you get to learn. And sometimes we're just a little too stubborn, a little too stubborn for things. So I know there was some other stuff that we were looking at, and just kind of some experts that gave some insights. Obviously us trying to do our due diligence and looking at the computer and seeing again what the world was putting out there, right?
Right.
So there were some people that were specializing in work-life balance, right? And one of the experts was saying one of the key factors in maintaining a healthy relationship while pursuing a demanding career is the big C, communication. Right? Don't we hear that a lot?
Oh, as men, we hear it all the time.
Yeah. So it says partners need to openly discuss their needs and feelings. And man, sometimes,
Wait, did you say feelings?
yeah, I did.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, us men, you know, sometimes are that stubborn that we don't share that. But the important part is that understanding the communication and sharing that with that significant other is important. And I think chime in this. This is where we feel like I think is saying vulnerable would be the right word.
yeah, we're vulnerable, and I think three of the most words that put fear into a man is "we need to talk." Or that's four. Sorry, four words. You hear that phrase,
Hmm.
"we need to talk,"
Yeah.
and it is some type of a biological thing that goes off in our brain where we're like, "Danger, danger, danger." Um,
Danger Will Robinson.
yeah, and I don't know why it's so hard for us as men to open up and to have communication. I mean, with each other, we can communicate fine,
Mm.
right? But when it comes to relationships and speaking with the opposite sex, there's something that our lizard brain somehow isn't able to do.
So we're gonna dive into that, right? But the objective in this is just both sides being transparent with each other, and it's all in regards of work commitments and emotional availability. But going back to your topic of who we are, right? I think one of the things that men, specifically men, and I don't want to take away from the women because there could be some barriers in there that women experience. But let's talk about men. Um, we tend to kind of fear away from saying how we feel, and clearly our significant others identify or see it because we wear it in our faces and just keep walking, and we get the "Hey, you okay? Anything you need to talk?" "No, I'm good. I'm fine." Right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I think here's the problem. If you don't have a relationship that you've built to be friends and really trust each other, because that's what it comes down to is trust. I think us men sometimes don't want to talk about our feelings or be vulnerable because listen, it's happened. And I think it goes both ways. Please don't take me the wrong way, but I think it happens to men more, but that's why you need to know your relationship. It blows back onto them.
Mhm.
Oh, you're weak.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, those are the voices we hear in our head.
right.
Yeah.
You're weak. Hypothetically, you say what you tell, you tell your significant other how you feeling, where it's going, why you feeling this way. And then they eventually use that against you later on in an argument, the heated situation, right? So I think some men that experience that, they rather just shut down and not even discuss it because here's the expectation is that if I reveal my feelings to you, what's going on in my mind and my heart, I'm expecting. I think you related to this earlier. I'm expecting for you to pick me up,
Mhm.
right? I'm expecting you for you to pick me up as am I supposed to be picking you up. You win, I win, I win, you win, and that's where the communication part and it's working with each other to work your way through that situation. And man, so important. Um, just not allowing ourselves to go down that rabbit hole. And us men need to, get ourselves together and trust in who you're dealing with. And here's the reality: for those that are not married, that are just dating, and I'm not talking about dating because some of us are in really serious relationships. Some of them just, dating, getting to know each other. Once you feel confident enough to having that conversation, and you reveal who you are, and you show your vulnerability to your significant other. If that comes back to bite you in your booty, those are the moments then you need to reassess. Really have a good conversation with that person to see then where's your future going to.
Yeah, I would say you're probably not with the right person,
Yeah.
as much as that may hurt,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of the times when we go on a date or when we meet somebody, we tend to put on this persona of what we think is going to be most liked, right? Because our goal is, oh, we need these people to like us first. And then afterwards, we find ourselves in a box where we're like, well, you know what? I can't actually act like this around this person because as I've gotten to know them, they don't like this particular trait or they don't like this particular thing that I do or who I am. So now I find myself in a situation, if I want to stay in this relationship, I can't be who I really am.
Mm.
And then that further shuts us down as we go along further and further in life because we find ourselves being less of who we are and more of who we think they want us to be.
Mm. Facts. You know what? It's a matter of setting some expectations so you can prevent misunderstandings and resentment. If you have those conversations early, you know where you guys stand, and work on building that relationship as best as you could. One of the other factors of, again, working from an understanding and reading an expert is practicing mindfulness could really help.
Hmm.
And I think we do this a lot. When you're home, be present, right? When you're home, be present. Your mind shouldn't be anywhere else. You're home. That's your
Right.
peace,
Right. And
right?
that's where you leave work behind. Don't bother reading those emails.
Yeah, right. But and this guy basically did said he says put away your work emails and focus on your partner.
Yeah.
This intentionally could strengthen your bond, right?
Right.
That what's happening at work, what's happening through your emails, that could wait. When you're home, this is your peace, right? You're here to share with not only your significant other, maybe you have children, but you got to be there. You got to be present. You can't keep going around and he said the right key word, which was mindfulness. You know, it isn't just a buzzword; it's a practice that can transform how we engage and those that we love. Right? There's things that the more and more you dig into something like this, again, it's like peeling the onion and trying to understand home and your work life, right? So one of the things I started reading and some practical tips, how effectively you could balance your relationship and career, right? And one of the things, and I think we touched on a couple of them through some of the experts, but number one, it says it's about setting boundaries, right? It's establishing clear hours and stick to them. Make sure that your partner knows when you're available.
Yeah.
How important is that for them to know how available you are? Kev, what's our next?
Well, prioritizing quality time. Um, doesn't matter if it's just an hour a week. It's just you're going to be dedicating time to each other without any other distractions. You're going to treat whatever that time is that you have prioritized as gold, as platinum.
Mm,
You're not going to make changes and break that time. That is the time that it's set. That is the time that your significant other or your family knows every Wednesday at 8 from 8 to 10, I'm going to be with my partner. I'm going to be with dad or I'm going to be with mom, whatever it is. This is the time that I know is ours and it's sacred. And just keep that time. Don't all of a sudden look at your calendar when someone brings something up and you say, oh, you know what? Wednesday between 8 and 10, I'm not really doing anything important. I can schedule something for that. No, that is the time that's for your significant other, your family, and you're going to prioritize that over any other time.
Yeah, you know what? I think, again, whether on the male or female side of the house is important for that your significant other to know that, to know and feel that you're prioritizing time for them. And again, that's going to take us right into our next, tip, which is, we just touched on it, is communication, right? Communicating openly. Share your work commitments and listen to your partner's needs. Regular check-ins, man, they help. Just you don't even realize how many times I've kind of been in the midst of things and I'm busy and the text comes in, "Are you okay?" And it's a relief because first thing that pops into my mind, I'm like, "She was thinking about me." Cool. All right. It's my turn now to respond and reciprocate. How important is that to reciprocate? That does that make you feel good?
Absolutely, 100%. And when it comes to communication, I like to stick to a couple rules. Um, there's I don't know if you've heard of the rule, the HALT method or the HALT rule.
Let's talk about that.
So it's HALT, which basically are hunger, anger, loneliness, and tired. So if you're feeling any of those four things, you halt, you stop whatever you're about to say. If you're in a point where you need to communicate something with someone and you're feeling any of those four things, that is not the time to have that talk. If you're lonely, you're gonna feel that you're not being listened to because you feel lonely already. You have an emotion that makes you feel neglected, that makes you feel all alone, and any communication you have is gonna reflect off of that. You're getting like, she's not listening to me. She's not hearing what I'm saying. If you're tired, again, you're tired. We get grumpy and we don't want to talk. We're just are tired. The world's completely against us, and it's not a good time to talk. If we're angry, that says it all. We're angry, right? We don't want to hear your point of view because I'm angry. You're not listening to me. You need
Or
to
you're
hear.
you're clearly not going to penetrate that person.
You're not, right? You have your defenses up too. So the other person trying to talk to you and get across what they're feeling, but you're angry. So you have your own shield up. And then if you're hungry, I mean, that's why it's called hangry, right?
Mm, that's true.
Right? We're hungry, and again, that's a biological need that we need to satisfy. And until we get that satisfied, we're not ready to have an open dialogue.
Mm.
So that's one of the things. If I hear those words, we need to talk. I had to do an assessment of myself at that time. Am I hungry? Am I feeling angry? Have I had a rough day and I'm really not ready to talk?
Right.
Am I feeling neglected? Am I feeling lonely? Or am
Well,
I just downright tired?
tell me about a lonely. Let's dive into that one.
Yeah. So sometimes we're at work and through fault of our own fault sometimes, because we have not been participating intently on our relationship. We've been basically doing things at work. Maybe things at work aren't going as well. We don't feel appreciated at work because of some things. And then we have not kept that dialogue and we have not kept working on our relationship. And then we're feeling that we're not being appreciated at home because of that.
Mm.
So we feel like we're basically alone. We're like, there's nobody.
So it's a sense of we're isolating ourselves.
We isolated ourselves, and a lot of it's if you have a good open dialogue with your partner and you do a lot of the other things we talked about setting boundaries, having you prioritizing time, being intentional on your scheduling time with each other, then in theory we shouldn't feel that loneliness because we know we have at least one person in this world that has our back.
Mm.
Even if the ship is sinking and everything there, we have that one person that has that life preserver for us and been holding it for us, waiting for the moment when we need it.
Wow. So I'm looking at the T portion of it as being tired, right? And it said it's fatigue. It's like fatigue is like being hungry or
Yeah.
angry,
Or hangry. Yeah.
right? It says a condition that affects the brain. Wow. Being tired, the lack of sleep, we all develop some kind of sleep disorder down the line. But again, think of halt just in general and every, breakdown of it. And one of them being tired. you don't want, I guess men and women, you don't want to deal with the nonsense. And when you're tired, you need your rest. You need your rest. And that is one of the bad timings when you haven't given yourself the proper rest. You haven't thought about, what the issue is because you're exhausted of, the 12, 16 hours that you just put in. Uh, um, Shoot, Kev, I listen to you sometimes, all the driving you're doing. I
Yeah,
can only imagine how tired you are and sitting in the car for whatever amount of hours. And then you have to engage in the situation. And realistically, in your mind, you just want to kick off your shoes, get comfortable, either lay in the bed and or just turn on the TV and eventually fade out because then the TV is going to be watching you for a little bit, right? But
right.
but it's trying to find that rest, and not engage into something that's really gonna, you know, antagonize you even more. So how important it is for halt, right? For people to understand what halt in a sense means so you don't go down that rabbit hole to
Right.
create more problems in your relationship.
Correct. I mean, I think one of the worst things you can do is fall asleep when your partner's trying to talk to you, right?
Oof. How disrespecting that is.
And saying that, then once I go through that assessment of myself, whether I should halt or not, then the other thing I go to, and it sounds like a lot, but it's really quick when you go through this, is I think sometimes it's 4 T's, but I stick to 3 T's, right? And by what I mean by that is you mentioned one, which is timing,
Mm,
timing, tone, and turf. In love and war, where you pick to do your battle is important, and that's the turf. When you decide to have that conversation is your timing. And then how you speak to the other person, is your tone. You don't ever want to have a conversation where, even though you may be, you should have gone through the halt first and not
mhm.
be angry, but let's say you are. Let's say you are angry about a situation, but you realize you're not really angry at the person, just a situation, right?
Right.
So your tone needs to not be an angry one because we were young boys once, right? And how did you feel when your mother started scolding you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, I tell you the truth. I felt like I was ready to get rocked.
All right. I mean, nobody likes being talked to in a specific tone where
Hmm.
the other person's angry or saying things, because then it shuts us off too, right? So that's your 3 T's. You can elaborate more on that. So,
Yeah. I mean, so that was one of the people that I wanted to touch on, and you introduced me to that. Is Emily Morse. Um, she's a therapist, obviously unique. She has her own podcast running right now. It's actually called Sex with Emily. Been running since about 2012. But you guys can look her up. And just to piggyback what you were saying, I think she's also introduced the 4 T's in this manner. Again, it does touch on timing. So let's if we do a deep dive into the timing portion, and this is all to support everything that you were saying, is this a good time to bring this up as I consider the location, the environment, and time we have to talk? Is this a good time to bring this up considering the state of my heart and emotions at that moment, right? And then is this a good time for me to express my thoughts, opinions, and bias in light of what we're going through?
yeah, you said something really important that just occurred to me as you said it, that resonated. Um, how much time is available, right? Because how many times someone starts a conversation with you and it's already late in the day and you yourself are tired and the conversation goes on and you think it's almost over. And then, like you would see in SpongeBob 2 years later, the conversation is still going. And you checked out a half hour ago.
Yeah, that's that's bad.
That's bad. So timing is very important.
Yeah. So the piggyback behind that, her other T is obviously the tone. What is the tone of my voice? What is the tone of my body language? What is the tone of my heart? What is the overall tone of our relationship? And then what is the overall tone of the environment we're in at that moment? So, tone is a lot. And I think I'm going to use myself as an example. I've always been one that I learned the hard way, which was my voice is already deep to a certain extent. When I'm in a hype or hyper situation, antagonized, I am very loud. And I've had to learn to tone that down if I am trying to emanate a message for them to understand where I'm at that moment. Because screaming to the top of my lungs, you are not getting anywhere. What you do to that significant other, just say any person, you are now just raising their anger to another level. They're not hearing you, right? And one of the biggest things that, in the midst of this part, we don't listen to listen, we listen to respond, right? So just imagine my tone going 100 miles an hour, loud as could be, and then I'm expecting for them to reciprocate, give me something back to explain the situation. They're not thinking anymore because my tone just rocked them, made them angry, and all they're looking is to respond at one of the things that you just dropped. And you probably may have dropped 6, 7 things in that 30, 60 seconds. And it was just that one thing that they just wanted to respond to.
Right, because they felt that's the one thing you were wrong on. They weren't listening to the other things, just
Mhm.
what they want to point out that you might be wrong on.
Right. And again, that's that on both sides of the coin, male and female. It happens to us. So jumping back into to Dr. Emily Morse, her third one is technique. And she says, I'm using a compliment sandwich, starting with one compliment,
That's a good one when she talks about the compliment sandwich.
yeah, then one constructive point, followed by another authentically positive statement. Interesting sandwich. I'm gonna repeat that one again. So she starts with the compliment sandwich, and that's starting with one compliment, then one constructive point, and then another authentic positive statement. She says about being careful to not use words like always and never to describe how we feel. Don't we use those words a lot?
You're never on time. You're always late. You always hang out late with your buddies. You're always going out, never including me.
You always say this,
Right,
and you tell me that you're never going to do it again.
right.
Wow.
Yes.
So it's about owning our own stuff and not blaming others or playing the victim. You got to know everything, from both sides of the situation. Let's wrap it up with the truth. Just like what was my man? You can't handle the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You guys know that movie. I can't fathom the thought about it right now, but I know it was between
A Few Good Men, is that it?
Few Good Men. That's right, Kev. You got it. It's Tom Cruise and what's our guy's name?
Jack Nicholson?
Jack Nicholson. You need me on that wall. So let's go right to truth, right? So the truth is what I'm saying is the truth that lines up. Oh, let me say this. Repeat that again because I'm about to chop this up. It is what I am saying a truth that lines up with Scripture. Yeah, I said it. Well, the doctor said it. Does it line up with Scripture? Is it what they're saying to me a truth that I need to hear, even if their timing, tone, and technique is off? That's interesting. Is it what they're saying to me a truth that I need to hear, even if their timing, tone, and technique is off. What do you think about that?
Yeah, what she's saying is basically we need to be receptive to others' constructive criticism of us. We may not agree, we may not want to hear things sometimes, but after it's all said and done, after we get past our emotions, we should kind of replay that back from sit outside of ourselves basically and look at it as someone looking on the outside in. And is it actually true? Is it something that we need to work on?
Facts. And then just think of this. She follows it up to close up the truth by saying, is it possible for me to be teachable in spite of how I feel and apply this truth to my life? Man, that's some things to really sit and talk about, right?
Absolutely.
And if you guys take the moment and do a little research on Dr. Emily Morse, you'll get to see some of those things that she's pushing out there that will make you sit there and definitely think, man, and fine tune you to understand, you and your significant other, to joint journey and something like that to get to understand a little bit better, you know, the this situation, the four T's of communication, right? So, Kev talked about what was it? What was your three T's?
Timing, tone, and turf.
Timing, tone, and turf, where this one was timing, tone, technique, and truth. And then we talked about halt, right?
That's right.
Hunger,
Anger
lonely.
and tired.
Guys, look it up. Do a little study on that. Do a little deep dive into something like that. I know I didn't wrap up on some of the other practical tips, but here's the other one: being flexible, right? Life is absolutely unpredictable. And Kev, I think you touched on that. Is be willing to adjust plans as necessary and understand that sometimes work may take precedence.
Right. I mean, I did say earlier that prioritizing quality time should be sacred, but there are times. And I'm going to say this that if you stick to that you're prioritizing time always with your significant other, then when an emergency does come up and you communicate that with your significant other, they should at that point be okay with it and realize it because you have demonstrated to them your intent at always having them first. So then they know, okay, something came up. We can reschedule our time this week. Don't cancel it. Just reschedule it.
Facts. And then let's wrap it up, man. Is celebrate each other's successes. How important is that, right? You got to take time to acknowledge and celebrate those milestones in both your career and your relationship. Anniversaries, birthdays, holidays, promotion,
Promotion,
transfer.
killing a meeting. You have that meeting, and there's nothing better. We all like being patted on the back one way or another. But when you have that significant other that's your biggest cheerleader, that is probably the one that puts the biggest smile on my face is when that person tells me congratulations or you did a great job. Everybody else can tell me I did a great job until that one particular person says you did a great job. That's the one that puts the big smile on my face.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, man, I'm gonna say this for you guys. We want to hear from you, right? When you guys get the chance, go to sip and say it podcast at gmail.com. I think Kev, you got the other email there too, right?
Right. We also have info at sipandsayit.com. And if you go to sipandsayit.com, that's where you will find all the information about our podcast and upcoming events.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, again, just in support of what this episode, um, if you faced any challenges and balancing your career and relationships, we want to hear. We want to know about those stories, right? I mean, that may launch another episode for us down the line. So, as we wrap up today's episode, remember that finding the balance is an ongoing journey. That's something that doesn't happen overnight. We don't snap into just instantly knowing, right? And it requires a lot of effort, commitment, and willingness to adapt. Because I think that's one of our biggest problems, other than communicating, is that some of us don't want to adapt to those situations. So, look, from me and Kev, thank you for joining us on this episode of Sip and Say It, which was balancing love and ambition. So again, don't forget to subscribe for some more insights. We want to hear about those stories on navigating life's challenges, man. Thank you very much. And listen, folks, it's real talk, one sip at a time. Thank you.
On behalf of your host, Los, thank you for joining us this week on Sip and Say It. Without you, the village, and the participation on Sip and Say It, the universe will never know what's on your mind. Subscribe to Sip and Say It on media platforms like Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Pocket Cast, and our very own Facebook page at Sip and Say It. Email us with your thoughts about the episode or topics you'd like to hear to be discussed at sipandsayitpodcast@gmail.com. Tune in next for our next episode. We can sip and say it together.